I am only the story I tell myself. I am only the story I tell myself. And so I have to become a really good storyteller. But most of us pick our stories up throughout our lives and we never refine them. We think the
Mm,
story is real. That's the
yeah.
biggest untruth.
Welcome to That Explains a Lot. Real conversations about this messy, magical life.
We talk about the things that don't make sense until suddenly they do.
Welcome back
Welcome. There we go.
to That Explains a Lot.
Ugh. It's for me, it's about the energy of that explains a lot. I love that moment when I'm like, oh, and I finally get it, right? I
Yeah.
finally get it. And I think that this is really connected to our title today, right? Which is really the truth you've been afraid to say, most importantly to yourself, right? What is the truth you're afraid to say even to yourself? And how important it is for you to acknowledge yourself and your truth.
Yeah. And how, when you don't acknowledge that truth and you suppress it, that's what causes the damage. That's what
Mhm.
causes the changes that maybe you don't particularly want or hadn't planned for. Um,
Yeah.
as soon as we can really be honest with ourselves, then that's where we give ourselves freedom and freedom of choice. And having girlfriends around you is part of that. I was just saying to Susan before we started recording today that my story about this is, I think, is a pretty common situation
Mhm.
because, my husband and I were married, I think, like 18 years or something. And I was so unhappy.
Mhm.
I was really unhappy. And of course, it was so much easier for me to blame him
Mhm.
for everything. It was his fault that I was carrying too much weight because we had this big party lifestyle. It was his fault that I couldn't shine and go out and do what I wanted to do and step into something greater. I blamed him for everything. And
Yeah.
if I'd really had taken some time to get underneath and go, well, why am I so upset? Why am I so unhappy? Uh, I would have realized that there was just so many things that I wanted to say, that I wanted to speak up about. But I thought, if I say that and I put that truth out there, it's going to end my marriage.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I didn't. I just suppressed it. I just kept it all in.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
got to the point, like, I think it might have been a year, maybe even a little bit more, since we'd had sex towards the
Yeah.
end of our marriage. And so
Yeah.
once you stop having that intimacy, then you don't have conversations, you don't have any kind of connection, and then you just feel further and further apart.
Yeah.
So by the
And
time we got, yeah,
Natalie, I'm gonna say this. I don't think we think enough about this because I think you're so in the middle of this that this was this experience that you were having. This is the experience that most women throughout time have been having.
yeah,
That the concept of being in a happy relationship is a relatively new concept where women can be self-expressed and talk up and share their truth. We're living in a relatively this is a new era for women. You know,
yeah,
the women that came before us and the women that came before us and the women that came before us, if you spoke your truth, you would get killed. You would get
mm,
beaten. You would be cast from your home.
yeah,
So this concept is so as we speak about this piece today, I want everyone who's listening to think about the fact that you are standing on the shoulders of the women who came before you, who came before you, who came before you. So as we talk about truth today, this is a sacred conversation.
yeah,
This is a sacred conversation that a lot of women didn't have the privilege to have. So if you're in your life struggling, like the story you just shared, it's not an uncommon one,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and we're living in a different reality now.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm thinking, "I can't say this because 'cause it'll end my marriage."
Yeah,
Marriage ended anyway.
yeah.
Like,
And you
that
know
didn't
what?
stop
You're
that
totally
sunshine
okay.
from coming. Oh, and
Yeah.
and, I really did some self-reflection after our marriage ended because 'cause I'm like, "Look, I contributed to this, I know I did, and I'm like, it's time for me to start to fess up and,
Yeah.
really take responsibility and acknowledge what my part in this was."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and and I realized, all the things that I blamed him for, or everything about being held back, once I was single, I realized, oh, damn, if I don't step into this, I can't blame anyone else. And then I realized that I was using him as an excuse,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
once you blame someone or something outside of you, you lose all power to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
while I was in that little blame game, I was in a holding pattern of
Yeah.
my own making
Yeah. Yeah,
because
well,
I wasn't.
but now more than ever, women now more than ever have permission to let go of and be able to speak their truth. But I think a lot of us are still learning, is it safe? Can I
Mm,
really trust not just my environment, but can I
yeah,
really trust, myself, right? So I think this is we're we're um we're in a really fun space of discovering what is the next generation of woman going to look like, right?
right.
So being able to be in your truth and empower yourself to know that you the most important relationship you're ever going to be in is the one you're in with yourself,
Yeah,
right? More important than your marriage is the
yeah,
one that you get to be in with yourself.
yeah.
And we have that, and women, we uniquely have that opportunity like before we never had. So, it's an
Yeah,
interesting one.
a and also holding all of that back is
Yeah.
what stopped me, what was between me and, these deep friendships, with girlfriends that I was able to nurture after that.
Yeah.
'Cause, I
Yeah.
think I've mentioned it before because I was so so unhappy and so numb, and I had to numb myself so
Mhm.
that, I wasn't just faced with the helplessness and the
Yeah.
defeatedness of everything that I
Yeah.
felt my situation was.
Yeah. You're
So
like,
I
"I'm
would numb
fine.
myself.
It's just a
Yeah,
phase." You
that's
were
right.
yeah.
There's
I
nothing.
remember, so
Yeah,
my husband and I flew out to Australia not too long after we met.
yeah.
We had met at ATL, and then ironically, Jared and I were taking the kids to Australia, went to Australia, and we met up with you and Glenn, and I remember going to that dinner, and it was towards the end of your marriage. I didn't know. We didn't know at that point,
Well, we
but it was
didn't know
so
either,
interesting.
but,
You didn't, and maybe, yeah, nobody, the truth wasn't out there, but boy, the writing was on the wall. But
right.
it was like, I'm fine. And that
Mm,
really was even it was in your posture as you sat next to him, he who
yeah,
was supposed to be your partner, and it was like there was a real projection of like, I'm fine. And I think you believed it. You believed
yeah,
it, but it slowly does break down. And then the truth, man, it will set you free. And I'll tell you, after I saw you when you did finally end your marriage, there was a freedom in your body because
yeah.
you are now living in truth. Like,
Mhm.
it's amazing how not living in truth locks you up.
Yeah,
So just pay attention to your body. And are you locked up somewhere? Are you rigid somewhere? Are you, not breathing deep somewhere into your life? And that might give you an indication that there might be a deeper truth that needs to reveal itself.
yeah,
But the freedom that you had in your body after the truth it wasn't fun. You were
no,
devastated. It was jarring. It was messy, but man, your body looked
yeah.
free.
Well,
I don't know if I've
the
ever told you
truth
that.
the truth is that, Glenn ended the marriage,
Mhm.
because I would have just kept going,
Yeah,
being
yeah, not
unhappy.
uncommon. Not
Yeah,
uncommon. Women wear
I
good
didn't.
shoulders,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
So, I must admit I was grateful that he was the one that took that step. In the moment, it was jarring, but I'm like, "We're gonna be fine. It's okay. I want this
Yeah.
too. It's okay."
Yeah.
But the truth is, I would have just, I don't know how long I would have kept going without taking some kind of action because I, didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want
Yeah.
to, I didn't want to burn the bridge. I didn't, like, I just didn't think that that it was, I don't know, it was kind of like it wasn't
You
my
didn't wanna be
place to do
alone.
it.
You didn't wanna be
Well,
alone.
I was pretty happy to be alone there for a while.
You're like, "Oh,
I'll be honest, not having to check in with someone all the time and being able to do what I want without it, my choices were my own. And I'm like, oh, let's see, what do I have to consider to go on this vacation or do this thing? Nothing. I don't have to check
nothing."
in with
Yeah.
anyone. I could do it. That was quite liberating there for a while.
That was quite liberating.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, this shows up the way this shows up in my life, and I just find this really interesting. Is um, I have a hard time surrendering and telling myself the truth that I actually need help. Right? Like I remember
Yeah.
when COVID happened, um, I got sick, I got COVID, but I wouldn't tell myself the truth of that because I kept smelling things and I was like, I can still smell, so I'm okay. And it was amazing to me how many untruths I told myself. I was like, I thought I was depressed. I thought that there was something wrong with me. I thought that I was like demotivated. There was all of this negative self-talk that I was in, and I wouldn't sit in the truth that I was sick
Right.
and that I needed to be still. And in fact, I remember like one day I went to Pilates. Hello, I was sick. I went to Pilates and I came back and I sunk into my bed and I disappeared. I went to the guest bedroom so that I could hide. And
Mm.
I remember just feeling like I wouldn't admit I was sick. I wouldn't tell myself the truth that I was sick, and I was hiding rather than asking for help. And that was really alarming for me because it sucked. And I was trying
Yeah.
to be I was still trying to get up for the kids and I was still trying to be motivated for my husband. And it was horrible. And then my husband I ended up getting a well woman check, and I was getting some blood work done. And this is after I had been sick. And I just asked the doctor casually, I said, can you just check and see if I've ever had COVID? And they said, oh my gosh, Miss Patrick, you had a really recent infection. And I was like, "Oh, duh." Like, even though I could smell, it was still COVID. And I lied to myself. I wouldn't look at that truth. And then my husband went through it. He got sick and he said he apologized to me afterwards. He goes, I am so sorry that you went through that and didn't let anybody help you.
Yeah.
And so for me, the learning in like, if I don't tell myself the truth, if I don't stand in the like, I need help, I'm vulnerable right now, I'm sick, I need to stop, how I just am denying myself and I'm not allowing the love to come in
Yeah.
that that's around me,
Yeah,
so
well, you think about all the stories that we tell ourselves. Like, I was just saying before, I loved being single. I loved my life. I had this amazing, I was traveling all the time and it was just fantastic and amazing. And it was. And I also wanted love. I wanted to be in a relationship.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
I wasn't, but I had all these stories in my head.
yeah,
I'm too
yeah,
old. Who's going to go out with someone, that's like old like me? I'm too busy. I'm not attractive and blah, blah, blah. Like, it just all those untruths that we tell ourselves
yeah, yeah,
until you sit down and, it wasn't till the pandemic that I was able to sit down with a coach. I had nowhere else to be. I mean, normally I was on a plane every other day,
yeah,
and she really helped me to understand the untruths that I told myself, but what the actual truth is, because
yeah,
we're all telling ourselves stories all the time.
mhm,
Our stories are
mhm,
making up our reality. So,
yeah,
we can look at the stories of I'm too old, I'm unattractive, no one's going to really, love me, I'm unlovable, all of those kind of things. Or we can tell a different story, which
yeah.
is still the truth. Like, I mean, I don't think that that's the truth, but that is the truth.
Mhm.
I'm an
So
amazing
let me
woman.
let me just say this for me really resonated. I had a really great friend of mine who passed away. His name was Sean Stevenson. He was a motivational speaker.
Mm,
He had brittle bone disease. He had broke over 200 times before he was 18. So
yeah.
this man had experienced extreme pain in his life, and when he was born, the doctor said he wouldn't live for more than 24 hours. And he would tell me, and I think that this is when we talk about truth, right? When we really talk about truth and our humanity, it is about getting to the empowered space because our truth as human beings is empowered. And what he would say is never believe a story that leaves you disempowered. And
Mm,
so, you know, that sense of like, I can't speak up because it'll ruin my marriage. That's disempowering. right? That story that I was telling myself that I'm not sick and I just am I'm lazy and that's a really disempowering story.
Right.
So part of what I want to infuse into this conversation about truth is that truth ultimately will lead you to the most empowered version of yourself. Woo! Like, you know,
Yeah.
like that's what I that the truth is not truth.
Mm.
Truth is woof! Truth. Like, woo! I am a loving being. I am a divine being. I am an empowered being. That is the truth.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the truth. You know, and I
Well,
think
I know.
sometimes we hear truth and it's like, I'm fat, I'm old. It's this heaviness, and truth is the exact opposite. Um,
Yeah. Well, one of the things I learned working with my coach during that time is that, I would start telling the story about things that happened when I was a kid. And, we all have stories that have shaped us and, shape our decisions, who we are, our level of self worth, our money story, all of those kind of things. And I remember I was telling a story about my childhood, and my coach said, Nat, it's time you release that story because
mm,
that's the child's version of that story. She
mm,
goes, "You need to start retelling it from the place of evolution of where you are now."
mm.
She
I
goes,
love
"You
that.
know better." She
Yeah,
goes, "Look at all
yeah,
the gifts and look at who you became because of that situation."
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I know like how tough it was for my parents. I mean, 8
Mhm.
kids, oh my God, in a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. Yeah. It was a lot.
It
But,
was a lot.
but having, when we get to this part of our life where you go, okay, I have this awareness, I have this empathy, I have this compassion and understanding now. And I can embrace how that, terrible situation helped me to become this amazing person that's helped to, you know, do what I do and have get to live the life that I
Yeah,
had. So
yeah,
what is another version of the story that is also the truth
yeah,
that we can
yeah.
be
The
telling
deeper
ourselves?
truth, the deeper
Yes.
truth,
Yeah.
right? And the truth that leaves you empowered. You know, you are only, and I get this, I am only the story I tell myself. I am only the story I tell myself. And so I have to become a really good storyteller. But most of us pick our stories up throughout our lives and we never refine them. We think the
Mm,
story is real. That's the
yeah.
biggest untruth. That's not. So if you line up my sister, my brothers, and me, and we all talk about the same story, it'll be 4 different stories.
Yeah.
And so whose story is real? You know, the story that you're telling yourself is what becomes your reality. So you get to tell the story from whatever perspective you choose. And most of us believe that the perspective that we picked up when we were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 is the perspective. I love what you're saying that your therapist said, wait a minute, your coach said, no, tell it from a different perspective. Tell it from the vantage point of today.
Yeah.
You know, how would your today self tell that story so that you can stand in being really empowered with,
Yeah.
what happened with your mom, what happened with your dad, what happened with your brothers, what happened with your sister, what happened in that past relationship.
Yeah.
I I
Well,
I think truth is empowered truth.
yes. Because you
Yeah.
think about it, a lot of our stories, people take that on as part of their identity. And I
Mhm.
had this moment, like I was at a little seminar kind of thing, and I remember this woman, she was quite upset, and she's like,
Yeah.
"You don't understand. If I don't hate my mother, I have no idea who I am." And I'm like, "No."
Yeah. Yeah. Our story becomes our identity.
Mm,
It was really, and I think I've shared this a little bit about this before, but moving to Mexico for me was really about, it really, I had to sit with myself as an empty book because who I am in the United States is very different than who I am in Mexico. And I was talking to a friend of mine today on the beach, and she said to me, she's actually moving from Mexico and she's going to Japan. Like, talk
mm,
about 2 different cultures, right? And she says, what
right.
I love about going to different cultures is that I become a blank book and I get to know myself. But how many of us write the story as if it's in stone?
Mm.
And it's like, oh my gosh, let it be in pencil,
Yeah.
let it be in pencil. You have an eraser. Like,
Yeah.
don't be so quick to be in the truth of who you think you are. When people say, well, that's just who I am,
Mm,
I'm always like, oh, how sad.
yeah. Well,
Do you
and
let
that's the
yourself
thing.
surprise yourself?
Yeah. And if you're facing a transition right now on whatever area of life that you're doing,
Hmm.
um, sometimes, like I know when Glenn and I first ended the marriage, I was like, who am I? Like, I don't even know who I am without him. Like, it was just,
Yeah,
Glenn and Nat for years and years. Um, but then I started to shift the question to go, well, who do I want to be?
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
every transition, every shift, every new chapter that we have in our lives is an opportunity for us to go, well, who do I want to be now? Like, what
Mhm.
are the characteristics? What is the identity? What is the personality that I want to step into in this next version of my life? Because if we all sat for a moment and go, okay, let me think about what the 20-year-old version of me was like.
Yeah,
And when I think about that, I mean, I was brash and I was overconfident and I was cocky and I was fearless and I was all of these things. Now I have a little bit of that, not to the extent that it was back in my 20s, but I've also been able to gather other characteristics and personality traits as well. That's
yeah.
making me an even better person now. And we always had that opportunity to be able to step into that.
Yeah, yeah. And letting it be a little disorienting, and that truth doesn't blow
Yeah.
your life up. That truth
Yeah.
doesn't blow your life up. Suppression does.
Hmm.
Suppression does. And giving yourself permission to speak the truth from an empowered space, because I think that
Yeah.
sometimes we're speaking truth, and we're speaking truth from our irritability. We think we're speaking, but it's a numbness. The numbness kind of, or the suppression is that irritability or the numbness or the resentment, or I'm exhausted. That's it all. Like when you're suppressing it, right? Now, the next piece is this, right? So when I'm in suppression and I'm feeling all of that negative downturning emotion, if I'm going to step into my truth, I can't step into my truth from anger. I can't
No.
step into my truth from disappointment.
Mm.
That I have to step into my truth from it. I'm sharing this because I desire to feel more empowered. I'm sharing this because I desire greater alignment. I was talking to a woman yesterday, and she's in the dating pool, and she's older, and she's trying to find a guy, and she was like talking about just how he didn't show up right and he didn't do this right. And, she thought she was really good in telling him, what he needed to do in order for, but I was like, none of that sounds very fun.
No.
Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
She's like, he has a few of the qualities I really like, but he did this, and this wrong. Right. And she was very critical. And I was
Mm.
like, okay, that all might be true, but isn't there a bigger truth in why you're dating?
Yeah.
Aren't you dating because you want to have fun? So
Mm.
speak to your truth through what it is that you want. You know what? I want to play and have more fun. And right now, that doesn't feel very fun. Can we pivot the energy
Mm.
rather than, this is not what I want, and I don't want you in this place of judgment? And so, how we position our truth and what we're aligning it with, because I want
Yeah.
to play, I want to have fun, I want to feel good, I want to feel alignment, I want to feel empowered. And our truth and speaking about what you want through that lens can really pivot how people receive your truth.
Yeah. And darling, it is exhausting. I mean, I remember the facade that I had up because I didn't want to let anyone in. I didn't have any good relationships. I didn't have any close relationships with girlfriends. I'm like, if you get behind this facade that I'm maintaining all the time, I'm fine, you're going to see that there's nothing. You're going to see that there's
Mm,
this numbed out shell of a person because I can't face the fact and tell myself the truth of how unhappy I am.
mm,
It was
yeah.
exhausting, you know.
But let me tell you that even in your exhaustion, Natalie Ledwell, I loved you so much, and I knew
No.
we were always going to be friends. And
Mm,
like like that's the truth of who you are,
hmm,
and I've always seen it.
yeah.
And
Well,
it's like I love you, and I loved it, and I love that you've shed that past relationship so that you've been able to step more fully into just the loving, open, confident grounded, humble, real Natalie Ledwell, you know?
Thank you,
I
darling.
yeah, I love
But
you.
I love who I've become,
Yeah.
and I'm honest with you. It was I was shaped by the women that I surrounded myself with
Mm,
because I saw the
mhm,
qualities in the women that I had around me, and I'm like, I want to be like that. I want to be more like that.
mm,
And I
mhm.
think that when you have that community and you have those people around you and
Yeah.
those women that aspire you to want to be more, I mean, that's what makes life just delicious. You
It
know?
makes it delicious. It makes
Yeah.
it delicious because what we know is that when we ignore it, it drains our energy. It drains our life force.
Yeah.
When we kind of ignore it, it splits yourself into two, and that's exhausting. And that there's versions of yourself that you can't keep up with. Right.
Yeah.
And so this is an interesting conversation. And I hope that as we're talking about it, because I don't know if I hear enough people talking about being in your truth from a space of empowered truth, because you are
Right.
divine and you deserve to feel good and you should enjoy your life. And we're all
Yeah.
lucky to be here,
Yeah. And
in this
and
magical, messy life.
yes, and I encourage you to, if you do have these feelings coming up, or you do feel like something is off, just and we're not saying burn the bridges, whatever, but it
Mhm.
just take some time to ask yourself some really great questions.
Yeah. Right.
And what I had to do in the end, which I didn't do while I was married, was, well, if there's, two people contributing to this situation, what is my contribution? I think
Yeah.
that was just a really powerful question for me to ask. I think maybe I asked it too late,
Huh.
for my marriage, but I definitely I'm always in that question, like, what am I
Too
contributing
late
to
for your
this? What is
marriage,
my
but
part?
right on time for yourself,
That's right.
and that's all that matters. Too late for your
That's
marriage,
right.
but right on time for yourself. And the
Yeah.
relationship that you're having with yourself is what's most important,
Yeah.
and so we've talked a lot about kind of looking at your truth and talking about your truth. And in episode 6, we're going to talk about how do we really kind of how do we reassure ourselves that I'm not a problem that needs to be fixed. I'm not something
Mm,
that is broken, and that I can really step more fully into myself from an empowered position. Right?
yeah. So who are you becoming? And the thing
Mhm.
is, we get to become whoever we want. So we're going to be
I
talking
ain't
about how
done.
we do. Yeah.
That's right. So I don't even think we shared our names at the beginning, so we'll share our names at the end. So I'm Susan Patrick,
And I'm Natalie Ledwell. And thank you
and we
so much for
appreciate you being
joining
here.
us. And we'll
That's
see
right.
you next time.
If this episode made something click for you, don't stop here.
Subscribe to our Substack at Nat and Sue for more honest conversations and connection beyond the mic.
We'll see you there.